Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the CUFI Weekly. I'm your host, Kasim Hafiz. So I have a question for you this week. Do you know what is happening on the Israel-Gaza border? Yes, I know we've talked about it in previous episodes. There's a wealth of information on the CUFI website about the situation with Hamas and the rockets, etc. But I mean right now. Do you know what is happening on the Israel-Gaza border in the last few days? Let me know, please. I would love to hear from you in the comments. But there's a very real situation going on, and what has really been, I can't even say shocking anymore, because it's not shocking, is the lack of reporting from the mainstream media about this situation. Over the weekend, Israel dealt with riots on its border with Gaza. We're talking explosive devices. We're talking about Palestinians trying to take weapons from IDF soldiers. We're also talking about Barel Shmueli, a young Israeli border guard who was shot in the head. He's currently, as we record this, in critical condition in Soroka Hospital in Israel. The coverage in the media, the condemnation globally, has been once again minimal. These terrorist groups claim that they're having these protests because of the holdup with Qatari aid into Gaza. So a number of things, let's dispel those straight away. Firstly, can you blame Israel, who just fought a conflict with Hamas, who were firing rockets at them, at their population from Gaza, wanting some safeguards to make sure that money isn't going into the hands of the terrorists to rearm and build more rockets and weapons? Can't blame them. Secondly, an agreement had already been figured out. There is now an agreement in place which will allow that aid to go into Gaza. So this is nothing more than opportunism from the same terrorist groups who will then say, well, Israel isn't maintaining the ceasefire. Israel is trying to defend its border and you're sending rioters, you're sending terrorists, and you've shot somebody in the head, yet nobody seems to care. This is a serious incident. You know when people will care? When Israel responds. When Israel takes actions to protect its citizens, then the international media will be there. They will be having their analysis. Everyone will be an expert. This is absolutely abhorrent and disgusting. Just as I said last week, Hamas and the Taliban are two faces of the same coin. Two different sides. Literally, you've seen statements from Hamas celebrating the Taliban victory. Just a few days ago, Mohammed Al-Kurd, who is a very well-known Palestinian activist in Jerusalem, who has been on all these mainstream news channels and is seen as, the face of Palestinian activism, tweeted out, "I hope that they have PTSD forever," or something to that sort of nefarious intent, directed at US soldiers coming back from Afghanistan. Horrific and disgusting. But to focus on the main issue I was talking about, on top of these riots, the incendiary attacks have increased, and there were 9 fires started on Israel's southern border because of incendiary balloons coming from Gaza. Two things with these devices. One, they cause huge amounts of destruction in the summer heat when they hit a field. We've seen forest fires in the US. We know how this pans out. Secondly, they're attached to balloons. They're trying to attract children. How sick and disgusting is that? Yet, search through the mainstream media, you'll find very little mention. I found one article talking about how Israel responded with airstrikes on Hamas targets, and then it talks about the situation, but nobody treats attacks on Israel. Nobody treats terror on Israel as the main story anymore. And it's absolutely abhorrent and disgusting. This is why, time and time again, I will emphasize, CUFI will emphasize, you have to be a spokesman. You have to be making sure that these stories are getting out there. You need to make sure that people know that when Israel responds, this is where it started. It started with riots on their border. It started with one of their soldiers being shot in the head for just trying to protect his country's border. Think about the incredible restraint the Israel Defense Forces and the border guard have shown. While you see footage of explosives being thrown, people trying to steal weapons from soldiers, they showed incredible restraint. Yet this doesn't make it on the news. No. It's when Israel responds to try and defeat terrorism against its citizens. That's when it will make the news. So please, be a spokesman. Keep up to date on our website, because you are the difference. In the battlefield of public opinion, in the battlefield of truth, the members of CUFI are integral to it. You are the front-facing spokespeople and soldiers of the truth when it comes to the Middle East. If you're not educated about what's going on, that's okay. It's very little information that we're getting in our media, which is horrific. But go on the CUFI website, cufi.org. Check out our micro-histories on YouTube. Watch previous episodes of the CUFI Weekly. And if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the messages below and we'll try and respond. We are here as a resource to you so we can make sure that Israel's side is being heard and the US-Israel relationship stays strong for decades to come. This is Qasim Hafiz for the CUFI Weekly. For Zion's sake, do not hold your peace. Thanks for checking out today's episode of CUFI Weekly. If you enjoyed this episode and want to stay up to date with the latest news from the Middle East along with topics involving US-Israel relations, please be sure to like and subscribe. And remember to click that notification button so that you are notified every time a new show is uploaded.